Mike, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
How could I pass on this great seat?
This is nice. I think it's canary yellow. Did you have a car ever that had this?
I had a 68 Comet Sports Coupe.
Yeah?
Didn't have upholstery quite this nice.
Wasn't this nice? Was it this color, though?
It was green.
I feel like they discontinued this color on automobiles maybe around 1972 or something. I don't know. So, I don't kind of always start discussions like this, but I kind of suspect where you came from has a big impact on how you view the world and how you do your job. So let's just start with the kind of really basic biography question. Where'd you grow up and what did your parents do for a living?
Okay, so I'm a cheesehead. I grew up in central Wisconsin. I was telling this story to someone earlier. Little town of 5,000. It's still 5,000. I can still walk down the street in that town after leaving a long time ago. Yeah. And if they don't call me by my name, they call me by one of my brother's names. So I guess that's kind of home when they know you 40 years later, right?
Yeah.
My little town, the biggest industry was an iron foundry. Gone now, not surprising.
Yeah.
My dad was the controller for that business. My mom stayed home with us. One of oldest of 4 kids.
What do you remember about that iron foundry and sort of your father and
I worked in that iron foundry,
yeah.
and it was, I appreciated the opportunity to get an education and do stuff like this as opposed to stuff like that, right? Not only because those jobs have gone away, but that was hard. Yeah. This is hard a lot of days, but not as hard as that.
Yeah. How about the town's relationship? That was a one industry town, basically?
Well, yeah, it was, a lot of farmers, right? Central Wisconsin, a lot of farmers, a couple of industries, and so pretty tight community. Again, everybody knows everybody.
And was your father at the foundry through its entire course? Or?
He was there, well, not through its entire course, but for my whole childhood, and through his whole life, or his whole adult life.
So iron foundry, I don't know, that's the real deal, right?
It was. I still have burns on my arms from. I was what was called a core maker.
Yeah.
So when you put together, this is probably not where you want to go, but when you're pouring metal, let's say you're making an engine block, right? The places where you want to leave the molds are made of sand, right? And they've either got a resin in them or they're baked so that they're a hard mold. The place where you want to leave a cavity in a casting, you put what's called a core, right? You make those cores, they blow them in on these big heated machines, and you reach in and grab them, and if you get your forearm in there too far, you get branded.
Yeah. So when you started working there, your dad worked there his whole career. What did it kind of teach you growing up about sort of your relationship to a company and a person's identity being kind of connected to that profession?
Yeah, I probably learned a lot of the lessons from my. I probably recognized that I learned a lot of lessons from my dad later on in life. I knew I wanted to do. I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to get on with that whole process. I love computers. That's where I started my career as an engineer. Yeah. So I was intent. But if we learned one thing, we learned to work hard.
Yeah. So you kind of took that. You go to Madison for undergrad, and that's University of Wisconsin, right?
Yes.
Okay. I'm from Boston. I'm sorry. I haven't been there, but.
I thought you were making a joke.
No, I'm just stupid. Just a little ignorant on that. But then you head out west and you go to HP.
Yeah.
And this is when?
83.
Okay. So what is the company that you get to at HP at that point?
I've had a lot of really great experiences, and I think I've won the cosmic lottery 10 times over, right? But I got to HP, shorts and a t-shirt to work every day, with an incredibly smart, it was back when it was still HP. Bill and Dave were still were still Bill and Dave, still alive. Dave Packard was the chairman. John Young was the CEO. It was the old HP, and it was, I couldn't believe they paid me to come to work. It was invention and creation and smart people, and we worked our butts off, but we had a ton of fun. And like I said, they paid me for it. Yeah. That was a really, I kind of refer that, I guess, along with Catholic school as, one of my brainwashings, and the whole idea of the HP way was something we learned and we lived, and it really, the importance of culture was a huge lesson from that the people you work with, a common mission, all those things there's power in that, real power. I mean, yes, it's great to have smart people, it's great to have a well-financed company, there's all that's good, but the culture is what really can make it hum and make it fun. Yeah. And that was when I left HP to go to grad school. I remember saying it to my then girlfriend, my now wife, I might be leaving the best job I'm ever going to have in my career, and I'm only 26 years old.
I mean, you were wrong, but sounds good. But I mean, this is.
But it was a good job.
Yeah. Okay. So this is pre-Silicon Valley. Silicon Valley.
Well,
right?
It was early Silicon Valley.
Early Silicon
right?
Valley.
So HP was one of the foundational kind of. I mean, Apple was there then, but they were a different Apple, right?
Yeah.
It was still Silicon Valley then. It was just it's not the tech giants are different now, right? The Googles and the Facebooks have taken over for the HPs and the Suns and the group that I knew in the 80s.
If you could distill kind of this culture that was there, I mean, besides sort of everybody pulling together and it being kind of casual but really serious, was there other things that you kind of pulled out of that said?
So it's you could probably talk to 10 people from HP, formerly from HP, and ask them about the HP way. You can probably read 10 books, and there's lots of descriptions, but I'll just give you a story, an anecdote. I can't remember, it was in 85, 86, kind of a turn down in the computer industry. At this point, HP had never had a layoff in its history, and they weren't going to start then. Yeah. And at that point, they basically, one day they announced, and I was just a bench engineer, right? They announced that they were going to have to make a whole bunch of changes. Everybody in the company is taking a 10% pay cut. They were also taking away the donuts that we got every morning. Yeah. There was more grumbling over the donuts than the 10% pay cut. I'm not kidding you. Yeah. But it was a no-brainer. It was a no-brainer that, of course, for the group we're part of, we're not saying goodbye to 10% of these people. We'll all take the 10% pay cut. It was not even. It was. That's kind of how tight it was, right? How much we were all kind of one organization, one family's overused, but that tight a group.
Yeah, you're very mission focused.
Yep.
Have you found that culture in other companies you worked at?
Yeah. So you go. Every company's different. But I think you find a variant of that. I think the heads will nod out here. The thing that I have in this career, all of us have in this room, is the patient, right? So that's an equally powerful kind of unifier, kind of North Star, so to speak, right? And if you don't lose sight of that, you're going to be okay, right? Cultures are different. I mean, there's definitely West Coast cultures, and it was hard for me coming back after grad school and wearing a suit and tie. That was a foreign experience. Yeah. But the people were still good, smart people, unified around kind of a common goal. When I found my way to medical devices, it was CPI then, right? In the early 90s, and we became, along with 4 of our sister companies from Lilly, became Guidant, and that was again another powerful culture. But the thing we in medical devices that I didn't have in the computer side was the patient.
So you made that leap into healthcare through your graduate school experience and then ended up at CPI right after?
Well, no, after grad school, I started in consulting, management consulting. Came here to the Twin Cities. My wife's from here, so we decided to come here to settle. And started in consulting, did that for a couple of years, and I missed the technology. And so I went looking for technology, and of course you go looking for technology here in the Twin Cities, and it's medical devices. Yeah. So I called up a buddy of mine from grad school that was at CPI and said, hey, what's medical devices like? He said, come on over and take a look. And that's what got it started.
And you found the same sort of immediate connection you found to HP?
Well, it was different, but it was young. I mean, there was a lot of 20-somethings that were kind of, again, we were young and we were learning and we were having fun and we were having success. So a lot of those same, it wasn't the same culture as HP, but again, smart people doing the right thing, aligned around a common goal. So, and that's it makes for an exciting work environment.
Yeah. So when you were at Guidant, you met one of your big mentors, right?
Jay. Yeah. So that's, as you think about how you get to wherever we all get to, obviously we don't get there on our own, right? And a lot of people help us out along the way. For me, probably the other than my dad, Jay Graff was the best mentor I had. Mac and I were joking about this earlier today about how many graphisms we all know, right? These sayings, but they're just genius, and you remember them and you use them. But yeah, he was a great kind of mentor, and ultimately when I left the big company, went on to do my startup thing, he was the one that recruited me over to he was at NEA then as a venture partner, and recruited me over to the startup CEO job. And so he was on my board, and that was kind of another kind of chapter in our relationship.
How long were you at Guidant before you ended up making that move over?
The whole run.
Okay.
So we spun out of Lilly in '94. Boston bought Guidant in 2006. So, and then I was there a few years after that. Wow. So yeah, for that whole end-to-end from start of CPI to the time I left Boston, it was about 19 years.
Wow, that's a pretty great run there. I don't think, I mean, maybe is there any sort of crowning memory of that whole run there that you?
Oh, you know what, the 90s they moved so fast. I mean, and it was just a rocket ride, right? I mean, there was so much innovation going on, not just from us, right, but all around us, and things were moving fast. It's fun to be at the front end of some of these new device markets, right? So the implantable defibrillator or CRT, or everyone's got different stories. I was on the other side of the drug-eluting stent when I was in Europe with Guidant when the Cypher got launched, when J&J launched the Cypher. Mm. So I got to feel the other side of being behind on the innovation side. But it was that stream of innovation, and it moved so fast, right? I mean, product velocity, I don't have any statistics, but I'm guessing it had to be twice the speed of what we experience today. Some of it's because the markets are more mature. Some of it's because the rate of innovation, the opportunity for innovation and fast innovation was just coming at you like that.
Yeah. So you're there for the whole run, and then you ended up getting recruited to do an emerging company, startup company. What's the name of that company?
Vitronis.
Vitronis.
So it's still there. Collimated ultrasound, catheter-based collimated ultrasound for both imaging and ablation. Mm-hmm. So it's early human kind of stage now. Really, I mean, the whole, as many in this room know, the whole AFib space it continues to grow and has a lot of opportunity for innovation. There's a lot of unmet needs, and collimated ultrasound was when I saw it, my first thought was, how did I not know this company existed? Mm-hmm. Really interesting technology.
What do you think was precipitated that move? I mean, presumably you could have stayed in the big companies.
Midlife crisis.
Yeah.
So I joke, but we've all been around, and a lot of folks out there have done the startup thing. I had never done the startup thing, right? And so and it's a it's a great experience.
Yeah.
And so it seemed like, if I wasn't going to jump for this technology that I saw as so interesting, when was I ever going to do it? And so I love the idea of small and fast and let's see what we can do.
Yeah, what was the good, the bad, and the ugly about that experience, though? I mean,
the good was the fact that if I go back to kind of the culture, right? We'd get together every Monday morning in the hallway because we didn't have a place. We had about 25 people in the company, right? Get together every Monday morning. Okay, what are we going to get done this week? Okay, who can't get their part done? Who needs help? You kind of have your stand-up meeting at the beginning of the week, and you see the ball move every single week. That was the good. I mean, how fast you can actually make progress. It's impressive what focus and small teams can do. I heard Randy and Mark talking earlier today about innovation in the big company versus the small company. So that was a very stark contrast. Just when you're only doing one thing, and you can shut out all the noise, how fast you can move and get aligned. The bad, it was interesting because I found myself missing the complexity of. I remember saying to my board at one point, this isn't a business. This is a 25-person R&D project.
yeah.
And I missed the complexity of a broader business. The ugly took me 18 months to raise the Series B, and it was hard.
Yeah.
In the end, we got it closed, but it's still a really, again, a lot of people out here have had this experience. You stare into the abyss, right, when that bank account's at zero, and you got to get the check. And it's great after the fact when you get the check.
Yeah.
But that one, that's.
Yeah.
I'm glad I had the experience, but that's definitely you don't know whether you're going to be around 3 months from now.
Yeah, like all great successes, they're much better told in the past rather than in the moment.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Hindsight's.
When it works, yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
But you didn't stay there after you raised the Series B. You had an opportunity at Abbott to build an EP business.
Right. So
what's the broad mission when you get there? What's the time frame there?
So Abbott acquired a company. Abbott had been investing has invested. Abbott Ventures has been doing medical device investing for some time. They had done multiple investments in the EP space. That's where I've been the last kind of 10 years or so. They pulled the trigger on a company called Topera. It's a mapping technology, and wanted to pull together an EP business and build it. For those of you that don't know EP, it's a, for lack of a better word, a toolbox kind of business, right? You treat a patient for whatever their arrhythmia is with a broad set of tools, a mapping system, diagnostic catheters, ablation catheters, delivery tools like sheaths and the like. So it's a broad kind of toolbox kind of business. So the idea was, okay, we need to start building the toolbox, right? And that was a really interesting opportunity to.
And so, how many tools did you have in that toolbox?
We had one.
You had one tool.
Yeah,
okay.
we had one, and with a vision to become Home Depot.
Okay. And you're thinking, I got this a pretty nice credit card that I get to buy.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay.
It's fun to think about how you craft that, and it's hard, right? I mean, there's some great companies in this space, and we're going to start from zero. That's quite a challenge. And then 15 months later, along came the announcement of the St. Jude acquisition, and we didn't need to build an EP business anymore.
Yeah. So when did you say, screw it, let's just buy St. Jude Medical?
I didn't say that.
No, but what did you? You're 15 months in. You're just to build this thing, presumably one technology at a time, fitting together and really smart pieces. And then they come to you and they say, did they come to you and say, we're looking at kicking the tires in St. Jude Medical, or did you read about it like everybody else?
They basically announced that we had a deal to acquire St. Jude.
Okay, so you knew when we knew.
More or less when you knew, yeah.
What did you think?
Good fit.
Yeah.
I mean, so okay, kind of shoots a hole in my plans, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Now let's figure out what this means for the broader Abbott. And It is a great fit. I mean, the putting together what St. Jude had with the medical device franchises that already existed within Abbott was a terrific fit. So, it's hard to argue with something, and silly to argue with something that makes that much sense for the business. So, just caused a little change of plans.
Yeah.
No big deal.
So, I mean, I would say St. Jude had a really pretty distinct culture. St. Jude Medical had a pretty distinct culture prior to the merger. What did you know about that culture? And
It's interesting, right? So if I go back to my Guidant years, obviously we competed with St. Jude for forever, right? Since the acquisition, since the acquisition of, I don't remember what was first, Pacesetter, VentureTech, that whole era, right? When they jumped into CRM in the mid-90s, all of a sudden we're all, we're competitors, and you form impressions of your competitors, right?
Sure.
But I had, along the way, I've had the opportunity to meet people like Manny Villafana, the founder of St. Jude. Now, granted, that was around the valve business, as opposed to the CRM or EP. But so you have some sense, and this is a small enough community in the Twin Cities. You know enough people. But yeah, I got to say, I went in with my impression of formed over 20 years of competing. You get inside, and you find a lot of what I knew from Guidant, for instance, or what you know from inside these other companies. It was patient focused. Yeah. It was innovation driven. There's a lot of really proud people of what's been accomplished. So it felt yeah, comfortable. And then on top of that, there were there's I don't know. We could probably have people raise their hand. Who's worked for only one medical device company in their career? Oh, okay, we got 10 people. So everybody's been a couple of places, right? And yeah, so it's not surprising that you find similarities in terms of the dynamics and the goals and all the rest.
Yeah, but I would sort of say that St. Jude Medical stood out in a lot of ways. They're feisty.
Yeah.
Pugnacious, perhaps, a couple times. We used to enjoy the volleying back and forth between the competitors over the years, but the culture at Abbott, much different than St. Jude Medical? Or?
Well, so I think one of the things we did was Abbott has an organizational model that we wanted to implement, a divisional model, right? And if you look at kind of what is now Abbott's medical device business, it's formed around 5 divisions. And that's kind of a difference, right? St. Jude was kind of one big monolithic division, not monolithic, but one big division. So starting to think about this in terms of being integrated from the concept through R&D to manufacturing to sales and marketing, all being lined up in a division was an organizational difference. Yeah. But no, you know what? You start getting down to the day-to-day stuff. Okay, what's the R&D project we got to get done? What's the product we're launching? Mm-hmm. A lot of the differences fall away.
Yeah, and once you got a chance to get in there and play around with the toolbox, you feel like you.
Oh, I think I'm really excited. I get back to kind of my first love in CRM, mm-hmm. Which I'd been out of kind of CRM for almost 10 years, and that's an exciting part. EP, that I've been doing I have my toolbox, right? We have a very rich toolbox, and there's just such big unmet needs in treating arrhythmias, and then heart failure is new. It's new to me, which makes it fun. The engineer in me, these left ventricular assist devices are crazy cool technology, right? I mean, they're just and there's again what's common with 25 years ago is there's still tremendous opportunities for innovation and tremendous opportunities for real growth, right? I mean, left ventricular assist devices. There are so many candidates for this therapy that don't get it. And there's reasons for that, and that comes back to us and how fast, a big part of it comes back to us and how fast we can innovate. AF, right? We'll probably treat something like 1% of the global prevalence with our tool set. Not us, just Abbott, but with ablation for AF globally, right? So it's dramatically underpenetrated. That's a statement about needs that aren't being met, right? So the same thing that existed in those rock and roll 90s I described really exist in these markets today. So I'm optimistic.
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of, this is a community that's dealt with a couple of these mega mergers now. First time it was probably felt pretty good because, you know, Medtronic buys Covidien, and now it feels like the center of the global axis of Medtech is here. And then I sense that, you know, there was some questions when, the Chicago-based company comes in and buys the Minnesota company here. I know it's not an iron foundry, but I mean, what have you found in terms of the community embracing this move, and what have you, now you're moving back here.
Yep.
Like
next week,
right? So from California, but I mean, and so how do you feel like you guys have positioned to say, hey, are you still a Minnesota company, even though you're based out of the Chicago area?
Yes. So we've got 4 sites here, about 3,000 employees, and adding more, right? So I was talking earlier about the growth in EP, right? And a lot of our EP R&D and a lot of our EP manufacturing is here. That's just on a great double-digit kind of growth trajectory. So yeah, Minnesota's important, right? There's again, we heard some of these discussions earlier about competition for talent and where are the engineers. Back to my startup experience, I had several engineers walk out the door and walk down the street to Google and get a $50,000 pay raise or whatever. It's hard to compete everywhere for those engineers, but the best device engineers are here, right? So Minnesota is really important. That's the reason I'm here. That's the reason it doesn't make sense for me to be in Chicago. I mean, Chicago is obviously where Abbott's corporate headquarters are, but this is where, our business is spread all over the place, but this is the kind of the center of mass for cardiac arrhythmias and heart failure.
Was it a conscious decision by you to move back here, or was it sort of decided that it would make most sense for you?
It makes the most sense. I mean, and I'm like I said, my wife's from here, I'm from Wisconsin, so it's not a hardship to come back to Minnesota, although I'm sure I'll be whining when the snow flies in the fall.
Maybe.
Or 4th of July. But no, so it was, and it's the right thing. It's the right place to be, to have the leadership for this division kind of here in Minnesota.
Yeah. So you've been a part of a couple of pretty big deals. So you're at Guidant, acquired by Boston. Now you were in the acquiring end. What are some of the things that you knew to look out for this time in terms of changes in culture, bringing together organizations? Were there things that you were like, okay, I got to remember this time to do this, or to not bite on this sort of? Every single consulting firm can hand you their little manual for how to do an integration. And they all tell you not to underestimate the people side, the culture side, and that's people skip right over that page, and they go to the okay, you do job X at company A, and I do job X at company B. Which one of us do we choose? You can't skip over the people side, and it's interesting because these jobs, these are personal, right? And you take down the sign. Yeah. And it means something to people, right? And you put up the new sign, and some people go, whoa, that feels different. That feels strange. That doesn't feel right to me. So you can't overlook that.
In the case of this one, so culture matters, communication matters, right? The other thing that's I guess human nature is if you leave a communication vacuum, it's going to get filled with the worst possible scenario, right? So if you don't say, you know, we're investing in site X, everybody's going to assume you're shutting site X down.
Right.
Right. It's interesting how the rumor mill fills it in with the worst possible scenarios. So you got to communicate, right? That you just, and so I think our integration has gone pretty well. And that said, it was made easy by the fact that there's not a lot of overlap. And what made these businesses such a good fit coming together is there was very minimal overlap, right? Some of the valve stuff, the mechanical valve stuff goes to structural heart division. You know, there's a couple of technologies that move to the vascular division. The rest is cardiac arrhythmias and heart failure. So if you're an engineer or a sales rep or a marketer or a manufacturing, you know, person, you go home on Friday, you come back on Monday, you've got the same job, you've got the same boss. And you've really got the same goals as a business. Those change over time, right? And if people understand, hey, we're still pursuing a lot, most, maybe more than we were pursuing before. I think this integration's gone pretty well. Although you can certainly you can certainly be surprised by some little things that you forget to do or miss or don't communicate that still ripple back, right? Because it's, you know, people's companies become their identities.
Yeah. So Abbott, so let's look big picture here. Abbott's about 130 years old?
Yep.
130 years old. You know, presumably we're building businesses, I hope, to last another 100 years. I mean, we've talked about AF and heart failure as some benchmark technologies. What are you working on today that you think will change this industry and make this possible to be around another 100 years?
Yeah, I think it's probably safe to say that it'll be a lot different 130 years from now. I mean, one thing that I'm a relative newbie at Abbott, right?
Yeah.
3 years. What's so impressive to me is just looking at what Abbott has done in the last 5-6 years, right? I mean, they were 2010. I wasn't there, but Abbott was dominant. Was a pharmaceutical company, you know, and separated, you know, the Abbott, what is now Abbott, with AbbVie. They put the proprietary pharma into its own company. That's a bold move, right? And now we're not just a medical device company, but the largest group of the 4 kind of areas is medical devices. So I don't have any doubt that we'll continue to evolve. I think that's what keeps you, you know, that's what keeps you around for 130 years. The business isn't going to be this, you know, that far into the future. So you've got to be prepared for change. But right now, what we have is a really interesting, you know, Abbott and a set of opportunities. The device business is growing. Devices are, I mean, they're harder than they were in the 90s, right? For a lot of reasons that everyone in this room knows. But there's still a lot of room to run, right? I think those unmet needs, those disease states, those costly conditions are begging for innovation, right? The definition, and again, I heard some of the discussions earlier today that the definition of innovation is changing, right? It used to just be build a better mousetrap, and boy, it was not easy, but it was straightforward. You know, now there's a lot of complexities with customers and economics and all the rest, but that just says, okay, they've got a different, you know, raise the bar on innovation. But these disease states like AFib and heart failure and diabetes are underserved, and that's what's those solving some of those problems or directing innovation at those problems is what's causing what's causing our growth, and we'll continue to drive that because we can't see where this tops out.
Yeah, and I kind of realized after I asked you, you know, we're in a technology evolution cycle. It's 5 years, everything is completely different. So I asked you to extrapolate that 20 times more. So you did a good job.
I don't have a crystal ball.
But I would assume, though, that the diversity of industries at Abbott-St, could you see some really interesting synergies there with the device space?
I think we'll have to figure that out, right? We know the patients with diabetes also have heart disease, right? We know that nutrition affects cardiac health, right? There is overlap between the patients we see, right? And so yes, we'll find some of those opportunities. But we also have this divisional model at Abbott to drive focus, right? So, and cardiac arrhythmias and heart failure is very broad now, right? So we're still working also to find synergies between what we're doing on the heart failure side of the business and what we're doing on the cardiac rhythm management side of the business, right? CRT is a heart failure therapy, and yet those two technologies, CRT and LVADs, have evolved separately within this organ. Well, I mean, Thortec was only acquired a few years ago, right? But by St. Jude. So I'd say I have my hands full to find the synergies within cardiac arrhythmias and heart failure, but there are across these disease states, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think you'll probably have a lot of fun doing that.
Absolutely.
We do have a mic out there, right? So that we could, if you guys have a couple of questions, we have time for one or two.
Don't give it to Madeline. She said she was going to heckle me.
Give it to Madeline. Did such a good job.
Yeah, that was.
Sarah, you got a question?
Everybody's asleep.
Well, Mike, thanks for taking us through your career and through what's next over with this really critical company, this community. I really thank you for all the participation that you've done today, sitting in all the panels. We don't often get people that come just
well, it's great
immerse
to connect.
themselves. So I really appreciate
these
it.
are fun to see old faces and fun to meet new ones. So
yeah, I mean, how many former coworkers do you think are in the room?
just look for the gray hair.
Well, thank you so much, sir.
All right.
And thank you to all you for today, and we'll see you tomorrow morning. So that concludes our program for today. Thank you.